Good evening once again. I'm Chris Jansing. Day 344 of the Biden administration. Tonight, the breaking news on COVID is a story told in numbers that are increasing and increasingly worrisome. Tonight, the New York Times reports the U.S. has shattered its single-day case record, almost doubling the highest numbers reported 1 year ago. Quote, as a second year of living with the pandemic was drawing to a close, the new daily case total topped 488,000 on Wednesday, according to a New York Times database. Wednesday's seven-day average of new daily cases, 301,000, was also a record. More than 13,000 National Guard members have been activated in 48 states. The White House says it's been surging aid to hospitals and other facilities. 1 million gloves, 342,000 masks, along with respirators and face shields, all shipped out, along with 40,000 gowns for frontline workers. Federal teams made up of members of the military, FEMA, and other agencies are also headed to states where infections are soaring. As for hospital admissions for COVID, the CDC says they're 14% higher than a week ago. That's an average of about 9,000 more people admitted every day. Officials note the pace of admissions isn't what we've seen in previous surges, but in many places, the crush of patients speaks to a very different reality.
Today, we have more Ohioans with COVID in the hospitals throughout the state than we've had at any other time during this pandemic. I think it's important to emphasize something. What we're seeing in our hospitals filling up, our emergency rooms, is being driven by people in Ohio who are not vaccinated.
Earlier this evening, Dr. Anthony Fauci noted there are even more signs now that Omicron is less likely to get you really sick.
It appears that Omicron, from data both in South Africa, the UK, and accumulating data here in the United States, indicates that it very well might not be as severe, and many people from studies that are going on right now who get Omicron have either no symptoms or minimally symptomatic.
The doctor was back on TV tonight because the controversy over the new guidance on reducing COVID isolation shows no signs of going away. The Washington Post reports the recommendation to cut the isolation period for asymptomatic infected people to 5 days was driven largely by the concern that essential services might be affected during this latest surge. This morning, the CDC director offered this explanation for the decision.
Well, so it really had a lot to do with what we thought people would be able to tolerate. The fact that we were going to have so many more cases, many of those would be asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic. People would feel well enough to be at work. They would not necessarily tolerate being home, and that they may not comply with being home. This was the moment that we needed to make that decision and those changes.
A few hours later, in a different appearance, Dr. Walensky insisted the new guidance is based on scientific data.
These updates to our recommendations were made to reflect what we currently know about COVID-19 infection. Let me make clear that we are standing on the shoulders of 2 years of science, 2 years of understanding transmissibility.
We've got a doctor standing by to take our questions on that and on the impact of this latest COVID outbreak just ahead. Also tonight, we've now heard from the January 6th committee about its agreement with the Biden White House to hold off on requesting hundreds of records from the prior Trump administration. In a statement, a House committee spokesperson said the panel, quote, welcomes President Biden's decision to clear the way for the production of another set of records. The committee has agreed to defer action on certain records as part of the accommodations process, as was the case with an earlier tranche of records. The statement goes on to say the Select Committee has not withdrawn its request for these records and will continue to engage with the executive branch to ensure the committee gets access to all the information relevant to our probe. Meanwhile, an ABC News report says the chairman of the January 6th committee has just invited House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy to sit for an interview with investigators. One committee member was asked about that earlier on this network.
I think would be important to listen to what Kevin McCarthy has to say. He has, in fact, indicated publicly that he has nothing to hide, that he would be willing to talk further, and I hope that he lives up to that. We know from other Republican members who related the conversation he had with the president that he had some communication. I'd like to ask Kevin about that.
The committee's fight for the rest of those records takes another step forward tomorrow. The panel and the Biden administration will file their response to Donald Trump's appeal to the Supreme Court, where he's asking to keep those records secret. House investigators have already asked the court to fast-track the case. Also tomorrow, the current White House will be spending some time with one of its country's main adversaries. President Biden has agreed to a phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, who requested the conversation. The White House says the two men will talk about the Russian troops now gathering on the Ukraine border and to warn Putin the U.S. will respond to any invasion.